Sudan's unseen catastrophe, amplifying local voices in one of the largest humanitarian crises. My name is Osama Mehmet Olu, and I work for the Committee for Justice, and I have the honor to be moderating today's discussion. Since April 2023, Sudan has been facing one of the gravest and most neglected humanitarian crises of the 21st century. Nearly 13 million people have been displaced, making it one of the largest, if not the largest, displacement crisis in the world. Famine conditions are emerging, diseases outbreaks are spreading, and almost 2/3 of the population now depends on humanitarian assistance to survive. Women and girls are facing severe and targeted violence, including the systematic use of conflict-related sexual violence as a weapon of war. In areas such as Al-Fashir, civilians are cut off from aid and trapped between hunger and continuous attacks. Yet, in the face of this devastation, local Sudanese actors, youth groups, women's organizations, medical volunteers, and human rights defenders have become the backbone of the humanitarian response. They are risking their lives every day to provide aid, document the violations, and protect their communities, often with little or no regional or international support at all. This side event seeks to bring their voices to and their work to the forefront of the regional and international agenda. And today we gather not only to reflect on the scale of human suffering, but to ask what more must be done to put an end to this suffering by the African Union, by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and by the broader international community to protect civilians, ensure accountability, and support the defenders and civilians working on the front lines. Our distinguished speakers will guide us through these urgent issues today in this event. And today I'm joined by Ramatullah Jalo, Regional Research and Advocacy Officer at SAIHA Network, and also Majid Maali, Human Rights Lawyer and Sudan Country Lead at Defenders, and Mohammed Birra, Program Director at Awafi Sudanese Organization. And we will start with Mohammed Birra, who will be addressing the attacks on humanitarian convoys and the ongoing siege of Al-Fashir.
Well, thank you so much, Usama, and very good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much also for your gathering to show your solidarity with Sudan. That means a lot to millions of Sudanese who they are now suffering from the crisis that we called against Sudanese. So we basically say that this war is against Sudanese because Sudanese, they were not consulted on this war. They only woke up in the morning and they found themselves that they are in the war, facing the deaths, facing the worst violation that ever you can imagine in your mind. And that is the situation currently since April 2023 and up to date. As we are talking now, people are dying because of hunger, people are dying because of food, and people are dying because of siege. And we're talking about siege. We are referring to the situation in Al-Fashir, whereby now is under the siege over 500 days, and then we can count more than a year, and more than a year now is going to be 2 years under the siege. Can you imagine a small city with a population, with a civilian, under the siege for over 500 days? That's not something we can just count as a number, that we are counting human cost. And you may pass by a poster outside telling that every number in Sudan is a human. So it's not just a number. So you may see a lot of numbers in the reports, but that is the people who are dying every day. That's the people who are facing different violations from the warring parties, and especially for those who they are living in Darfur, especially. And just allow me just to start with the facts and the numbers that the attacks on the humanitarian conveys and the attack on the humanitarian workers in Darfur. So up to date, we have more than 132 incidents of the attack. This is the attack on the humanitarian and includes specifically 29 deaths, 29 incidents of killing of the humanitarian actors, this including also volunteers who they are working in the front line to support the community who they are in need. And also we have 28 of the injured, so those who they are injured, and also 9 who they are abducted. And also we are speaking and highlighting the experience on the attack on the humanitarian conveyance. We're not excluding ourselves as Awafi. In last August, our team has been exposed to the attack by the RSF and the militia while they are coming from the mission outside the city. So they were looted completely, and among the team there were also female team members who they were shot very in a way that is inhuman way, and they have been harassed as well. So I think that kind of this kind of violation is not something that we can just lift it. Neither we need also to amplify the voices, because without the humanitarian workers, without the humanitarian assistance, people are dying, and we need to save the lives of the people who they are dying every day. Also adding to most recent incident of the attack on the humanitarian, yesterday in Tawila, I think one of the NRC team was found killed in unknown reason. So I think that's also counting to the numbers to be 133 attacks and incidents since 2024. So we're not counting also 2023, but 2024 and 2025 as well. So I think the situation is most worse, and all what we need is to amplify the voices of those who they're under the siege, and also calling for the protection of the civilians. So Al-Fashir is the most destroyed cities in Darfur, whereby all forms of violation that you can imagine of it's happening, and we need a concrete actions. This can be from the commissioner as well as also from the international community who they are watching silently. And we also say that the war in Sudan is a silent war, whereby there's not a lot of lights around what's going on, and a part of our responsibility and what we do is we're trying to amplify and highlight as much as we can what's going on in Sudan. But also we need also the solidarity, we need also others to join us, because we cannot leave Sudan in silence, and we cannot forget about Sudan. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Now we will move to Ramatullah Jallo. She will focus on documentation efforts, conflict-related sexual violence cases, and the services required. Also, she will address how women are serving within the community at the front lines of this conflict.
Thank you very much, everyone. And it is a pleasure to be here and standing in solidarity with the people of Sudan. My name is Ramatullah Jallo. I'm representing SIHA Network, and we're a feminist organization that does a lot of documentation of sexual violence cases. And our observations in Sudan is that the situation is dire, especially with respect to women and girls. This war is being characterized by prevalent and systematic rates of conflict-related sexual violence being perpetrated by both sides, but particularly the RSF with the largest numbers. So it is deliberately being leveraged as a gendered weapon of war, and it's being used to deliberately suppress, subjugate, and cause terror. And in terms of SIHA's documentation efforts, we've documented since the beginning of the war over 480 cases, and these have largely consisted of gang rape, sexual exploitation in exchange for critical food supplies, forced marriage, the like. The atrocities are endless. And 24 or 25.4% of these cases involve young girls, and it is widespread, but with substantial cases coming from Darfur and South Kordofan, the Nuba Mountains area. And in these areas, sexual violence also takes an ethnic dimension, where African identifying tribes are deliberately being targeted. And this is being driven by 25 years of impunity and failure to hold perpetrators accountable for their actions. So though we welcome the recent conviction of the ICC of Ali Rahman for war crimes and crimes against humanity, we still call out from the front line and from the grassroots to still call for the perpetrators that are still at large to be held accountable, as this is in driving mass impunity on the ground. SIHA has also documented over 291 cases of enforced disappearance of women, and with respect to women, this is overlapping with sexual slavery, particularly in North Darfur. Here we see women or young girls as young as 5 years old, and elderly women as old as 80 years old being subjected to enforced disappearance on the ground. And we also note the attack of the RSF on Zamzam IDP camp earlier this year. In addition, and as already touched on, in terms of the communities that are under siege, in El Fasher, Kadugli, starvation is also being used as a deliberate tool of war, again, to suppress and undermine and subjugate communities. All the while, in relation to sexual violence, we are in dire need of humanitarian aid, sexual reproductive health rights, psychosocial support, which remain limited and far in between. We need strengthened paths for civilian protection, and we need justice and we need accountability. We have women rights organizations, women activists, women frontline defenders on the ground who face intimidation and are targeted, particularly female medical practitioners, community kitchen staff, who bear the brunt of targeting by the warring parties, the RSF in particular, women supporting the emergency response rooms, despite all the work that they're doing on the ground, again, as pointed out by my speaker before, being the backbone of response right now, but at the same time facing enormous reprisal, a frigid and shrinking civic space with a crackdown on civil society organizations, as seen in the case of South Kordofan, for example. In relation to SIHA, following the Zamzam attacks, SIHA network actually lost 2 of our community kitchen volunteers. And so we say their names, Hassanat Musa and Nana Idris, to honor their lives and their bravery on the front line. SIHA has also documented over 300 cases of women being detained, charged, being called collaborators with the RSF under the Sudanese Criminal Code, and they are targeted or profiled based on their ethnicity, their socioeconomic status, and their location. They face the death penalty, and with no access to justice or adequate or comprehensive legal representation. So these are the needs on the ground that we shine the light on. So in relation to SIHA network, our cry at the Commission is for us to see the conclusive finding coming from investigations of conflict-related sexual violence from the Commission. We are longing to see this in the report that will be published. And we ask this Commission to hold Sudan accountable under the Charter, and also to continue to lobby and call for Sudan to sign the Maputo Protocol as a demonstration of its commitment to protecting the rights of women and girls. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
So I'd like to highlight the response of the African Union to Sudan crisis. As you may know, that the war in Sudan erupted in April 15, 2023. So since the war outbreak in Sudan, the African Union has done little to address the biggest crisis in the recent history. Recently, in this year, the African Union convened a high-level dialogue to coordinate peace effort to address the crisis in Sudan. The theme was Sudan costly work towards a peaceful resolution, emphasizing the role of the African organs and mechanism in improving and coordinated peace and humanitarian effort. However, let me just do a comparison between the response of the African Union to Kenya 2007 post-election and what the African Union has done in Sudan. So in Kenya, the conflict erupted in December 2007, and the African Union took only 2 months to address the violence. While in Sudan, now the conflict is coming to almost 2.5 years, the African Union has done nothing concrete to address the situation. In Kenya situation, the African Union appointed mediation leadership headed by the former UN General Secretary Kofi Annan. So the conflict started in December. In January, 2 weeks, the president of the African Union, John Kufuor, traveled to Kenya and met with Kibaki and Odinga just 2 weeks after the conflict started. The U.S. also sent its assistant secretary to State, Genidai Fraser. However, on Sudan case, we haven't witnessed any high, profile leader that's mediated to bring, peace in Sudan. In Kenya case also, we witness a high involvement of civil society, including activists and human rights defenders. However, in Sudan, all the initiative that have been, taken by the African Union, we haven't seen any engagement of Sudanese civil society. The outcome when it comes to Kenya, as I mentioned, that the African Union concluded a deal within 2 months. In Sudan case, until now, the African Union has failed to come with, a concrete and solid initiative. In Kenya situation, also the African Union engaged all its organ, including Peace and Security Council, the panel of the wise. In Sudan, still the African Union engaging only the Peace and Security Council. When it comes to the part that we are talking about right now, the issue of humanitarian access, the African Union in Kenya case immediately facilitated aid and corridor for aid to reach all Kenyans. In Sudan until now, the African Union couldn't identify any mechanism for aid to reach people in different parts in Sudan. As human rights defenders, activists, the possible strategy that the African Union should actually adopt to address this situation is to establish a lead humanitarian corridor by using Sudan and neighboring countries like Chad, South Sudan, and Ethiopia to ensure actually humanitarian access to the victim and people, namely people in North Darfur, Al-Fashir, and South Kordofan. Also, the African Union should partner with the UN mechanism and IGAD and donors to deploy envoy that's actually accelerate the effort to bring together the warring party, but also to use early warning mechanism to prevent further acceleration of hostilities. So I'll stop here and go back to you, maybe address any question from the panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Majid. Now we will open the floor for some questions and for discussion. So please, if you have any question or you want to make an intervention, please first introduce yourself and the name of your organization.
I mean, to be honest, the African Union in 2007, when Kenya post-election happened, it is not the same African Union right now. Looking at the leadership, who led the African Union at that time, So in terms of leadership, in terms of political will, in terms of resources available at that time, the African Union at that time is stronger than the African Union right now, as an organization. The second element is in Sudan conflict, the involvement of the geopolitical forces, and namely the camp that headed by Egypt and the camp headed by the UAE, prevented the African Union from, acting, immediately, but also doing, it is jobs actually to end this violence. So the situation in Sudan, it is completely different from what happened in Kenya. However, I just brought the Kenya example to show the willingness of the same organ addressing conflict within the same region, Thank you.
Any more interventions? Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, I'm sorry for the mistake. So, well, regarding to the recommendation on the response, and I think you have mentioned it, the African, we also need to see the African solutions in Sudan, because Sudan is part of Africa, whereby this war since it started in 2023, April, 15th of April, up to now, has caused largest displacement in the war, has caused also the largest humanitarian crisis in the war. And then in the face or in the top of this all, we are seeing slow response, slow solidarity when it comes to Sudan. So that means we need also, as African and as African civil society, to level up in terms of shedding light what is going on in Sudan. So basically, our recommendation, we need also an urgent response to the humanitarian crisis that is ongoing now, especially in the areas under the sea, in Darfur and also in Kordofan, whereby people are running out of food, people are dying because of food and the basic needs, and also because of the daily bombing of the city, especially in Al-Fashir, and also in the other areas as well. So this must be, the perpetrators of these violations must hold account. And also, among our recommendations to the Commission is that, as my fellow colleague speakers, they have mentioned that we need to see the concrete actions from the commissioners towards what is going on in Sudan. And as you have seen, the comparison between the response of the African Union and in the cases of, for example, for instance, Kenya and Sudan. So there is a huge difference, and we need to know what is delaying the response of African towards what's going on in Sudan. This must be an interesting conversation around to what extent African Union is considering the situation in Sudan, and then also working in order to respond effectively, rather than just to see statements or communications after communications and so on. But there is nothing happening in the ground. People are still dying. People are still facing violations in various areas, and massively actually in Darfur especially, and also in the areas where the conflict is now active. So, which is also unfortunate that we have a body like African Union, and we're still not seeing any actions in the ground. So, also going back to the point you have mentioned regarding to the actors, and I think the actors of this war, we believe that there are a lot of intersection of the interest that's going on, and this is also fueled by external motives, and those who they are also have external motivation towards what's going on in Sudan, and keep also supporting the warring parties in Sudan. This has fueled the conflict and expand the conflict to other areas. We need also to see those who they are still supporting the warring parties inside of Sudan, so through the flow of the weapons and other military equipments be stopped immediately. So this is also one among our recommendations, and also to be accounted for what they have did. Possibly, we are also calling for the humanitarian organizations, donors, who are also willing to respond to this crisis in Sudan. Still they can contribute. Still they can save life of the civilian. Still they can provide assistance in the areas where the assistance is most needed. I hope I covered part of your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ramatullah will follow up on the questions. Then we will take more questions.
Thank you so much, Bera. And I think also in addition, another thing that comes to mind is the fact that in response to the actors are emboldened because it has been perpetually actions that have been taken and then not addressed in terms of justice and accountability. So actors believe that they can do what they need to do, perform any atrocities with no means of accountability whatsoever. Though we do have this recent case, we look at the amount of years that it took for it to happen. So maybe the discussions, not even maybe, definitely, the discussions that need to be taking place are whether we need to look at an extension of the ICC mandate in relation to Darfur. Is that possible? What are the opportunities that exist there, especially because the atrocities are widespread? They're happening all across the country. If that is not the case, can we be borrowing from other country case studies, like establishing a special court that is specialized, as we've seen in the case of Sierra Leone, as we've seen in the case of Liberia, I believe. So these are some of the elements that we can be looking at, because addressing accountability, addressing impunity would also send a strong message that you do atrocities, you get punished.
Thank you for the panelists. We'll get more questions.
I mean, I believe actually the international community, including the UN and the African Union, should do their duty to, well, first of all, to ensure full humanitarian access to people starving and save their life, and take immediate action and put pressure on the warring party to sit and negotiate a peace deal. That's my response.
Okay, thank you. The second question was about, we had two interventions and two questions about solidarity. Mohammed. And especially they mentioned what can the NGOs do together?
Well, thank you so much, and thank you so much also for the questions, and it really shows the solidarity with what's going on in Sudan. Back to the question on the solidarity and what we need to see, or what we can do as civil society to respond to this. What we are doing currently as a civil society, we are increasing our efforts towards documentation and monitoring of human rights situation, because we see that is a potential for the future litigation, and also for holding the perpetrators account. Without having a proper documentation of the violations and the crimes that committed by the warring parties, so we cannot have justice. And we have just concluded the judgment on Ali Kusheb, which was something that gives us hope. It is not the full justice that we need, because still the regime members are out and the warning and arrest warning are still. But we want to see also the rest, al-Bashir and the rest of the regime members, to the ICC and to be accounted, whether to the ICC international as accountability mechanism, and also regional accountability mechanisms like African Court as well. So basically, what we need to see also your support towards what civil society in Sudan doing. It means a lot. This is my response in regard to the solidarity.
Thank you, Mohammed. Now we'll move to the next question, which was about the violence against women and what can be the role of the NGO to be played here. Rahmatullah.
Thank you for the question. Maybe before I address the question, also to recognize the intervention of our participant here, to say indeed, sexual violence is also being perpetrated against men and boys, and this is something that we've picked up in our documentation as well. So also a complex situation in terms of all of these cases being underreported, and there being a deep shame and a deep trauma in terms of bringing these cases forward. So thank you for shining a light on that as well, and we confirm it. In terms of the role that civil society organizations can play in responding to conflict-related sexual violence, it's enormous, and organizations are already doing so much work on the ground already. That's already in relation to documentation efforts, so making sure that there's awareness being shone on the plight of women, girls, men, boys who are on the ground and who are victims and survivors of these heinous acts. Another way civil society organizations are active in relation to addressing conflict-related sexual violence is through response. With the little resources that civil society organizations have, they are providing humanitarian aid. They're providing dignity kits to survivors that are in need. They're providing shelter in the form of IDP shelters for displaced persons. They are providing, as much as they can, psychosocial support and sexual reproductive health rights. Are these services enough? No. They don't address the wide scale atrocities that are being faced on the ground, but they are doing as much as they can to meet the needs on the ground. And this is why we're saying we need to protect civil society organizations from backlash. We need to protect civil society organizations from shrinking civic space. We need to fund civil society organizations in the face of global funding cuts, because civil society organizations are standing in the gap of addressing these issues. So just quickly in conclusion, civil society organizations are also analyzing the different patterns on the ground in relation to conflict-related sexual violence, and this informs our advocacy efforts in platforms like this, where we're able to say we've conducted research, see how we have a repository of knowledge products and research which are analyzing these trends on the ground, so that we can tell you all, so that we can tell our commissioners and the commission. So these are the ways that we are intervening.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the last question. It was about the impunity issue, and an example was Omar al-Bashir case. Mohammed Birra will address it.
Well, thank you so much. Just quickly, we have a long history of impunity, and that is really well known, that every perpetrators they're not held at account for the crimes that they committed. Among these, the Omar al-Bashir regime, they're responsible for the crimes against humanity, crimes of war, and also genocide in Darfur as well. So basically what we call also for the arrest warrant to be implemented. And this basically can be also an space for the other civic society who they are in the room to call or to join us in this call to have this arrest warrant implemented by their countries. We need to see marches on Sudan. Why we don't see marches on Sudan? Instead, also we see marches on Gaza and other places. So we need to see marches on Sudan in all over Africa. People standing in solidarity with Sudan, people calling for justice and accountability in Sudan. This is the only way we can take those perpetrators to the account, and also to end the impunity in Sudan. Thanks.
Thank you to Mohammed for answering questions. Thank you for all the questions. Unfortunately, we are very short on time, so we'll back to the panelists for closing remarks. 1 minute for each panelist, please. We'll start with Majid Al-Mal.
Thank you. So my final remark actually goes to us as Sudanese human rights defenders, activists, and human rights defenders across the continent, is to engage in proactive advocacy despite the challenges with the African Union. We still need, to engage with the African Union proactively, just to take responsibility in addressing the biggest crisis that we are living in right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Majid. I will move to Ramatullah for her closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I think in closing, it's great that we're able to have this panel before the publication of the fact-finding mission report. So we wait for it in anticipation. In relation to women and girls, looking forward to the findings on conflict-related sexual violence. We call on the Commission to continue to lobby for Sudan to sign the Maputo Protocol, to hold it to its obligations under the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The establishment of a specialized tribunal on Sudan is also something that we're calling for. We're calling for increased protection of women rights defenders, organizations that are doing so much work on the ground. We're asking for their protection against backlash. We are also calling for the inclusion of civil society organizations in the peace process, as highlighted by Majid. I think that's a really critical point. We are the people that hold these actors accountable, so let them hear our voices. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramatullah. We will move to Mohammed Birra, closing remarks.
Well, thank you so much. In conclusion, I would like to say that your gathering here means a lot for Sudanese and for those who they are voiceless and who they could not make it to this room and to these spaces as well. So this means a lot to them as they are facing their struggles inside the Sudan. Also, we call on the protection of civilians and also protection of humanitarian workers. As I have mentioned earlier, there's massive attack on the humanitarian workers, massive attack on the humanitarian convoys, and also massive attacks and killing of the volunteers who they are working to support the people who they are in need. So we urgently calling on the protection, this including also protection of human rights defenders and also lawyers and journalists who they are responding with their capacity in high-risk areas in Sudan. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. I want to thank all the speakers and all the participants for being with us today. The testimonies we heard from the panelists on the siege of Al-Fashir and the attacks on the humanitarian aid, and also the responsibilities of the AU and the African Commission, and the tireless work of women and girls on the front lines. This reminds us that this is not a crisis only. It's not a humanitarian tragedy, but a test for our collective responsibility as human rights defenders, as neighboring countries. And so this discussion must not remain a conversation alone. It should lead to a stronger action to protect civilians, ensure accountability, and support those risking their lives on the ground. So we hope that by the next session, by the next African Commission session, the violence will have ended and we will be meeting again not to speak of war, but of recovery, justice, and meaningful transnational justice process for Sudan. With that, I thank you once again, Alon, and we close this session. Thank you.